They called Claudia Rosetta London's most forgettable governess. Too old, too plain, too quiet to ever attract a duke's attention. For 15 years, aristocratic mothers dismissed her, servants pitied her, and gentlemen looked through her as though she were part of the wallpaper. Until the Winter Duke hired her out of sheer desperation, because his son, the future heir to one of England's oldest titles, had reduced 12 governesses to tears. Some fled. One resigned before breakfast. Another swore the boy was possessed. Yet on the very first day, the impossible heir looked into Claudia Rosetta's eyes and uttered 7 words that silenced the entire estate. "You know what I'm trying to hide." And that was the moment the Duke realized the woman no Duke wanted might be the only person capable of saving his son. Before London's secrets begin unraveling, take a moment to subscribe and join our little drawing room of romantics and detectives. Because in stories like these, the quietest woman in the room is usually the one holding the sharpest truths. England, 1879. In the glittering halls of aristocracy, a woman's worth was often measured by beauty, youth, and the brilliance of the marriage she secured. Claudia Rosetta possessed none of those advantages. What she possessed instead was patience. The kind that listened longer than others. The kind that noticed trembling hands beneath polished manners. The kind that recognized loneliness hidden behind tantrums. It was not the sort of gift London admired, but within Ashbourne Hall, where chandeliers concealed old grief, where servants whispered of an impossible child, where a widowed duke had long ago mistaken control for strength, Claudia Rosetta's quiet gifts would alter the fate of an ancient house. Before this story reaches its final dance, hearts will be tested, secrets unearthed, loyalties betrayed, and one stubborn duke will learn that love cannot be negotiated like an estate contract. Because sometimes, the woman society overlooks becomes the one person no one can bear to lose. And if you enjoy aristocratic scandals, impossible children, emotionally constipated dukes, and governesses with the patience of saints and the stare of detectives, subscribe now. Someone in this household desperately needs supervision, and it may not be the child. London society had many talents. It could flatter without sincerity, smile without warmth, destroy a woman's reputation over tea and sponge cake, and forgive almost anything, except a woman who had reached 37 without becoming someone's wife. They called Claudia Rosetta practical. They called her dependable. Occasionally they called her clever, but never beautiful, never desirable, and certainly never unforgettable. For 15 years, Claudia Rosetta had passed through drawing rooms and nurseries like a well-trained ghost, present, useful, invisible. She taught French verbs to stubborn children, corrected posture at dinner, mended quarrels between siblings, remembered birthdays no one else thought important. And when aristocratic households no longer required her services, she packed her modest belongings into neat trunks and departed with quiet gratitude. No fuss, no tears, no one begging her to stay. Because in London's grand houses, governesses occupied an uncomfortable place between servant and lady, too educated to eat below stairs, too poor to dine above them, useful, but never truly belonging. And Claudia had long ago learned the cost of expecting more. Rain tapped softly against the carriage windows as she unfolded yet another letter. Her gloved fingers paused halfway down the page, then lowered it, slowly. Another rejection. "Miss Rosetta, while your references are impeccable, her ladyship feels your maturity may not suit the youthful atmosphere of our household." Maturity? Claudia almost smiled. Such a graceful word. So much kinder than old. Outside, London's streets bustled beneath grey skies. Elegant ladies stepped from carriages. Gentlemen hurried beneath umbrellas. Flower girls darted between wheels and boots. Life moved forward. Entirely unconcerned that another opportunity had slipped quietly through her fingers. Across from her sat Mrs. Belcombe, a placement agent with excellent connections and dreadful manners. She cleared her throat. "You mustn't take it personally." Claudia folded the letter. "I don't." Mrs. Belcombe blinked. "You don't?" "No." Claudia tucked the rejection into her satchel. It seems rather exhausting to grieve every stranger's opinion. For several moments, only Rain answered. Then, there's one position remaining. Mrs. Belcombe hesitated. You won't want it. Claudia glanced up. Won't I? The older woman shifted. Ashbourne Hall. Silence. Even the horses seemed to hesitate. You mean the Winter Duke? Mrs. Belcombe lowered her voice. Prince Wulfric Ashbourne. Ah, that Duke. Widowed, powerful, devastatingly handsome, cold enough to frost crystal. Rumours surrounded him like mist. He trusted no one, attended few social events, and had become London's favourite subject of speculation. But none of that concerned Claudia. Only one detail mattered. His son. Mrs. Belcombe leaned forward. 12 governesses. Pardon? 12. Dismissed. Worse. The woman crossed herself. They resigned. Claudia raised an eyebrow. All 12? One left before luncheon. Another pause. What precisely is wrong with the child? Mrs. Belcombe's expression tightened. They say, her voice dropped further, he delights in cruelty. The carriage rolled onward. They say he watches people. They say he tells them things he shouldn't know. They say he destroys anything sentimental. They say, Mrs. Belcombe shuddered, the boy has never cried since his mother's funeral. Claudia looked toward the rain-streaked glass. Children weren't born impossible. They became impossible, sometimes through fear, sometimes grief, sometimes loneliness so profound it hardened into anger. What is his name? Mrs. Belcombe hesitated. Baron. Claudia repeated it softly. Baron. Outside, church bells sounded somewhere distant. What does he enjoy? No one knows. What frightens him? No one knows. What happened after his mother's death? No one knows. Mrs. Belcombe stared. You cannot seriously be considering this. Claudia removed her spectacles, polished them carefully, then placed them back upon her nose. It sounds, she said gently, as though no one has asked the correct questions. Ashbourne Hall rose from winter earth like something painted by old masters. Ancient stone, towering windows, ivory columns, impossibly elegant, impossibly severe. The estate did not welcome. It observed, as if deciding whether visitors deserved entry. Claudia descended from the carriage. Cold air brushed her cheeks. Footmen moved efficiently, silent, disciplined. A butler greeted her with practiced neutrality. Miss Rosetta. Good afternoon. This way. The entrance hall glittered beneath chandeliers. Portraits lined the walls. Generations of Ashbournes watched from gilded frames. Soldiers, statesmen, duchesses, men accustomed to command, women accustomed to obedience. Claudia followed the butler across polished marble. Has His Grace been informed of my arrival? He has. And Master Baron? He is aware. Something in the butler's tone unsettled her. Not fear, wariness, as though preparing for weather. They stopped before massive oak doors. The butler straightened. I opened them and announced, Miss Claudia Rosetta. The library fell silent. Prince Wulfric Ashbourne stood beside the hearth, tall, broad-shouldered, dark-haired, immaculately dressed. His expression revealed absolutely nothing. He studied her, not rudely, not warmly, as one might assess whether an umbrella could survive a storm. Miss Rosetta, Your Grace, you understand this position is challenging. I've been informed. 12 predecessors have resigned. So I've heard. His gaze sharpened. You remain interested? Claudia met his eyes. I've yet to meet the child. The Duke blinked once. A small thing, but noticeable. You don't wish to hear the accusations? No. Why? Children are frequently described by the adults they disappoint. Silence. Then, what if the accusations are true? Claudia folded her hands. Then I shall discover why. The Duke stared. Something unreadable crossed his face. Not approval, not irritation. Curiosity. You begin tomorrow. I beg your pardon? Unless you've reconsidered. No. Then tomorrow. He turned slightly, signaling dismissal. The interview was over. Efficient, unexpectedly, almost absurdly brief. As Claudia followed the butler toward the door, a voice drifted from somewhere above. Young, calm, clear. You hired another one. The butler froze. Slowly, Claudia looked upward. A boy leaned against the upper gallery railing. Dark curls, pale skin, sharp eyes are too old for 9 years. He regarded her thoughtfully. Not shy, not welcoming, assessing. Master Baron, the butler murmured. The child ignored him. He studied Claudia, taking inventory. Her sensible dress, her gloves, her satchel, her expression. Then, you should leave. No one moved. The Duke's voice sharpened. Baron! But the boy's gaze never left Claudia. They all leave eventually. He descended the staircase, one measured step at a time, until he stood before her. Smaller than expected, fiercer. His blue eyes searched hers, not challenging, searching, as though waiting to uncover the flaw that would send her running. Claudia knelt, ignoring the startled inhalation from somewhere behind her. Good afternoon. You won't last. Perhaps. They cry. Do they? They hate me. Claudia tilted her head. Do you hate them? The question seemed to surprise him. A flicker, gone almost instantly. Baron considered. Then, they leave. Yes. You'll leave too. The hall held its breath. Footmen watched. The Duke watched. Portraits seemed to watch. Baron's voice lowered. You won't last until supper. Then, he smiled. Small, beautiful, terrifying. Because it wasn't the smile of a happy child. It was the smile of someone absolutely certain he understood how the story ended. Claudia rose slowly, smoothed her gloves, then looked directly at him. I suppose, she said quietly, we shall have to make supper very interesting. For the first time, the impossible air looked uncertain. Only for a heartbeat, only a flicker. But Prince Wulfric Ashbourne saw it, and so did Claudia Rosetta. Neither of them yet understood that Ashbourne Hall had just witnessed the beginning of its undoing. Because hidden beneath polished floors and aristocratic manners, grief had been quietly poisoning an ancient house. And somewhere inside that frightened little boy was a secret powerful enough to destroy everything his family had built. Or save it. And if you've ever underestimated the quiet person in the room, remember this. Some storms announce themselves with thunder. Others arrive carrying lesson books and wearing sensible shoes. And Claudia Rosetta had just stepped into the eye of one. Morning arrived at Ashbourne Hall wrapped in silver mist. Outside, frost clung stubbornly to the gardens. Inside, servants moved with unusual tension. Footsteps softened, voices lowered. Even the clinking of china seemed cautious, as though the estate itself had learned not to provoke its youngest master. Claudia Rosetta stood before the mirror in her modest chamber, fastening the final button of her dark blue dress. She had slept surprisingly well. Not because she underestimated Baron Ashbourne, quite the opposite. She had learned long ago that difficult children rarely frightened her. Adults, perhaps. Children who had learned to weaponize their pain. Those she understood. A knock sounded. Miss Rosetta? Come in. A young maid entered carrying a breakfast tray. The poor girl looked nervous. His Grace requested that you dine before beginning lessons. Thank you. The maid hesitated. You should know. Yes? The girl twisted her apron. Master Baron pushed the last governess into the fountain. Claudia blinked. Was she injured? No. Then perhaps she needed cooling off. The maid stared. Then, unexpectedly, she laughed. It escaped before she could stop it. Horrified, she covered her mouth. I'm sorry. Claudia smiled gently. It's quite all right. The maid hurried out, still looking bewildered, as though she'd just witnessed someone strolling toward execution with pleasant enthusiasm. Breakfast passed in silence. The Duke occupied one end of the vast dining table. Claudia sat several chairs away, enough distance to remind everyone of their stations. Sunlight streamed through towering windows, silver gleamed, tea steamed. Prince Wulfric folded his newspaper. He has requested you. Claudia looked up. Requested? A slight pause. He specifically asked when lessons would begin. Interesting. And what did you tell him? That was your decision. Claudia lifted her teacup. I suppose I should avoid disappointing him. Something dangerously close to amusement flickered across the Duke's face, then vanished. He enjoys disappointment. No. Claudia set down her cup. He expects it. Silence. The Duke regarded her carefully. You've known him less than 5 minutes. I've known grief considerably longer. For several seconds, neither moved. Then a footman appeared. Master Baron is waiting in the schoolroom. Thank you. Claudia rose, smoothed invisible wrinkles from her sleeves, and walked toward Battle. The schoolroom looks perfectly ordinary. Shelves lined with books, maps, slates, mathematical instruments, a piano tucked quietly near the windows, the sort of room designed for order. Baron sat at the desk, hands folded, impeccably dressed, watching her. Good morning. You came? You sound surprised. You shouldn't have. Claudia removed her gloves. Shouldn't I? They all regret it. He tilted his head. You still can. Can what? Leave. Claudia arranged books upon the desk. No. Why not? You haven't given me a reason. Baron's eyes narrowed. Then, he swept every book onto the floor. The crash echoed, ink spilled, pages scattered. Silence followed. The boy stared at her, waiting, testing. Claudia glanced downward, then bent gracefully, and began gathering books. No scolding, no outrage, nothing. You aren't angry? No. You should be. Why? I ruined everything. You ruined organization. She stacked books neatly. Hardly the same thing. His brows furrowed. I did it on purpose. Yes. You don't care? I care very much. She righted an overturned inkpot. But I suspect the books aren't the problem. Baron's expression shuttered. You're wrong. Possibly. You think you understand everything? No. Claudia met his gaze. I simply think people often shout about one thing when they're hurting over another. Something flashed behind his eyes, gone instantly. You're strange. I've been called worse. He looked disappointed. You aren't supposed to say that. What should I say? You should punish me. Would you like punishment? No. Then perhaps we shouldn't waste time. He stared, completely wrong-footed. An hour later. Baron dumped an entire box of chalk into a vase. Claudia redirected the lesson. 20 minutes after that, he informed her that geography was meaningless because people seldom remained where they belonged. Claudia made a note of it. Then came French. He translated everything incorrectly, deliberately. How disappointing, Claudia said mildly. You knew I was wrong. Yes. Then why didn't you stop me? You wanted to know whether I'd embarrass you. Baron froze. You didn't. No. He lowered his eyes. Why? Because humiliation lingers. Because shame teaches children to hide. Because being wrong publicly hurts. Claudia remembered all of those truths, but she answered simply, because learning should feel safe. The room fell quiet. Outside, winter wind brushed against the windows. Finally, most people don't care if children are embarrassed. I know. You do. Yes. His fingers tightened around the chalk. Why? Claudia looked toward the piano, then back at him. When I was young, she paused, someone showed me kindness when they didn't have to. What happened to them? They died. Baron's eyes widened. My mother died too. There it was. Not anger, not defiance. Grief. Naked and trembling. Quickly hidden. You aren't supposed to mention her. Who says? Everyone. How exhausting. Baron blinked. What? Imagine loving someone very much. Claudia folded her hands, and pretending they never existed. He stared, then whispered, Papa doesn't talk about her. The schoolroom seemed smaller suddenly. He can't. You don't know that. No. She chose her words carefully. But adults can become frightened by pain too. You mean he's scared? Perhaps. Baron considered this. My father isn't scared. Everyone fears something. What do you fear? The question arrived softly, unexpected. Claudia looked out the window. I fear becoming unkind because life has been difficult. Baron frowned. That's stupid. A beat, then. I think I fear everyone leaving. The confession slipped free before he could stop it. His face changed instantly. Panic. Regret. He stood abruptly. I don't. You just said, I lied. You may. Baron stared. You aren't angry. People tell the truth when they feel safe. And if I never tell the truth, then I'll simply wait. You'll get tired. Perhaps. You'll leave. There it was again, always circling back. Abandonment. Claudia studied him, then quietly moved toward the piano. Dust coated its polished surface. You play? No. You don't? Not anymore. Why? Baron looked away. Papa locked away Mother's music. The air shifted. Even the silence felt different. Your mother played? Every evening. His voice softened. I used to sit beside her. What happened? After she died, he swallowed. The piano stopped. Claudia gently touched the keys. One soft note drifted through the room. Baron flinched. Another note. Then another. Simple. Familiar. The beginning of a lullaby. His breathing caught. You know it. My mother sang it too. Baron's eyes filled instantly. Not tears, something more fragile. Memory. You should stop. Do you wish me to? Long pause, very small. No. Claudia continued playing softly. No grand melody, no performance, only comfort. Baron moved closer without realizing, until he stood beside her, silent, listening. And for the first time since his mother's death, someone allowed music back into Ashbourne Hall. Unaware, Prince Wulfric stood outside the half-open schoolroom door, motionless, listening, his expression unreadable, until the impossible air whispered 7 words. 7 words that stole the breath from the Duke's lungs. Very softly, almost too softly to hear. I thought I forgot her voice. Inside the schoolroom, Claudia kept playing, as though she hadn't just witnessed the first crack in a fortress built from grief. Outside the doorway, the Winter Duke closed his eyes, because for the first time in years, his son did not sound impossible. He sounded heartbroken. And somehow, the woman no Duke had wanted had heard what everyone else had missed.
There are moments that alter the course of a life so quietly that no one notices them at first. No thunder, no declarations, no dramatic confessions beneath moonlit balconies. Only a pause, a glance held a second too long, a child who laughs after years of silence, and a man who realizes he may have been wrong. For Prince Wulfric Ashbourne, it began with music. He stood outside the schoolroom long after the lullaby ended. The notes still lingered in the corridor. Claudia Rosetta sat beside the piano, Baron remained near her shoulder, neither speaking, neither moving, simply existing together in a silence that somehow felt gentle rather than empty. Wulfric's chest tightened. It had been 4 years. 4 years since the Duchess's laughter had echoed through Ashbourne Hall. 4 years since music had ceased. 4 years since his son had stopped reaching for his hand. And now, a governess no duke had wanted had restored something he himself had buried. He stepped away before either noticed him, because he did not know what frightened him more, that Claudia Rosetta had succeeded where 12 others had failed, or that he had stopped hoping anyone could. 3 days later, the servants began whispering, not malicious whispers, bewildered ones. Master Baron ate breakfast. He thanked cook. He hasn't broken anything since Tuesday. He smiled at Mrs. Norcott. Impossible. The word passed from servant to servant. Impossible, 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 until the housekeeper finally muttered, perhaps the impossible merely required someone to listen. In the schoolroom, Baron glared at a mathematics problem. I hate fractions. You dislike fractions. I loathe them. You dislike them passionately. They're stupid. Claudia folded her hands. That's unfortunate. Why? You still have to learn them. Baron sighed dramatically. You aren't supposed to be amusing. I wasn't aware that governments had regulations regarding humor. You don't act like the others. No. Why? She looked thoughtful. Because I'm Claudia. The boy blinked. That's a terrible answer. It's the only one I possess. For several moments, Baron stared. Then, he laughed. Not loudly, not freely, more like surprise escaping through cracked walls. He immediately stopped, as though uncertain he was allowed. Claudia continued sorting papers. She pretended not to notice, because joy frightened grieving people almost as much as sorrow. If acknowledged too quickly, they feared it would vanish. You heard that. Heard what? You know. I'm afraid my hearing isn't what it once was. Baron narrowed his eyes. Then, very carefully, laughed again. At precisely 11 o'clock, Alden Veramont arrived. He entered Ashbourne Hall like sunshine invading a cathedral, all easy smiles and effortless charm, tall, elegant, dangerously observant. The oldest friend Prince Wulfric possessed, which wasn't saying much. You look dreadful, Alden announced cheerfully. Wulfric glanced up from correspondence. You've said that every time you've visited, and one day you'll appreciate my consistency. Alden settled into the armchair opposite. I hear rumors. How unfortunate. The boy hasn't terrified anyone recently. Wulfric continued reading. Silence stretched. Then, you hired another governess. Yes. And? She remains employed. Alden lowered his teacup. What? Miss Rosetta appears competent. You've had competent. True. You've had patient. Also true. You've had terrifying French women with military discipline. A pause. They lasted 6 days. Wulfric folded his letter. Miss Rosetta has lasted 8. Alden blinked, then laughed outright. My dear Wulfric. What? You sound impressed. I am not. You absolutely are. Wulfric's expression remained impassive, but Alden had known him since boyhood. He recognized discomfort disguised as indifference. Tell me about her. She's practical. Calm. Observant. Alden smiled. You've noticed. Wulfric's jaw tightened. I notice everyone. No. Alden leaned forward. You evaluate everyone. A meaningful pause. Not the same thing. That afternoon, Claudia discovered Baron hiding beneath the library desk. Master Baron. Silence. Baron. I dislike visitors. She crouched carefully. A pair of blue eyes glared from the shadows. They stare. Yes. They ask questions. Yes. They compare me. Claudia sat cross-legged upon the carpet. They probably do. He blinked. You aren't disagreeing. Would it help? No. Then honesty seems more efficient. Baron studied her. They think something's wrong with me. Do you? He hesitated, long enough to matter, sometimes. The answer settled heavily between them. You know what I think? What? I think you've been very sad for a very long time. That's not the same. No. Claudia nodded. It isn't. He looked away. Everyone wants me fixed. The words emerged quietly. They don't ask what hurts. Something inside Claudia's heart cracked. She understood then. Baron hadn't driven people away because he enjoyed cruelty. He'd driven them away because becoming unlovable hurt less than being abandoned. If everyone eventually left, better to control when they went. May I tell you something? He shrugged. When I was 16, she paused. The man I intended to marry died. Baron stared. You almost married? Very nearly. What happened? He became ill. Silence. Were you sad? Terribly. Did it stop? No. Baron's eyes widened. No. The grief changed. Into what? She smiled softly. Something quieter. He considered this. You still miss him? Yes. Even now? Yes. His gaze dropped. I still miss Mama. I know. I don't want to forget. You won't. Everyone else did. No. Claudia's voice remained steady. They simply learned how to carry her differently. For the first time, Baron reached for her hand. Only briefly. Only 2 seconds. But he did it. And standing unnoticed in the doorway, Prince Wulfric saw everything. He saw the tiny hand, the trust, the quiet, the impossible. His son hadn't voluntarily touched another adult since the Duchess died. Not once. Not until Claudia Rosetta. Something dangerous shifted inside him. Hope. Hope was treacherous. Hope demanded vulnerability. Hope reopened wounds. He hated it instantly. And yet, he couldn't look away. That evening, the family portrait gallery stood silent beneath candlelight. Claudia wandered slowly through generations of Ashbournes. Faces immortalized in oil, dukes, duchesses, children, legacies. Baron stopped before one portrait, a beautiful woman seated beside a piano. You look at this one often. My mother. The Duchess's painted smile seemed warm, alive. She was beautiful. Everyone says that. What do you say? Baron's shoulders lifted. I think she smelled like lavender. Claudia smiled. That sounds important. It is. A long pause followed. Then, I don't remember her voice very well anymore. His confession nearly shattered her. You remembered the lullaby. Only pieces. Pieces count. He stared upward. Do you think she'd be disappointed in me? No. You don't know. I know mothers. You knew yours? Very much. Baron swallowed. I miss being somebody she knew. Claudia opened her mouth. A sudden crash echoed through the gallery. The portrait tilted violently, then fell, glass shattered. Baron jumped, servants shouted, footsteps thundered. Prince Wulfric appeared instantly. Baron, I'm fine. Everyone froze, because beneath the broken frame, something protruded, hidden inside the wall behind the portrait, wrapped carefully in aged ribbon, a bundle of letters, dust-covered, forgotten. The Duke stared. His face lost all color. No, his whisper barely existed. He knelt, hands trembling. Baron moved closer. What is it? Wulfric unfolded the top page. His breathing stopped. Because written across elegant ivory paper, in unmistakable handwriting, were 4 devastating words. To my dearest Baron. The Duchess's letters, hidden for years, waiting, and suddenly, everything Claudia Rosetta thought she understood about Ashbourne Hall began to unravel. There are some discoveries that bring comfort, old photographs, forgotten lullabies, pressed flowers tucked inside books, and then there are discoveries that rearrange the foundations beneath your feet. The Duchess's letters belonged to the second kind. The library doors remained closed for hours. No servants entered, no tea was brought, no interruptions permitted. Only Prince Wulfric, Baron, and Claudia Rosetta. The first letter trembled slightly in Wulfric's hands. Baron sat rigid beside him. Claudia remained quietly nearby, not intruding, present. The Duchess's elegant handwriting flowed across the page. My dearest Baron, if you are reading this, then life has unfolded in ways I prayed it would not. You must know first that you were loved before you drew your first breath and shall remain loved long after mine has ceased. Baron's small fingers curled into fists. Wulfric stopped reading. His voice had fractured. He stared at the paper, unable to continue. For a long moment, the mighty Winter Duke looked utterly lost. Baron whispered, "Please." His father closed his eyes. Then I tried again. You will be told many things about strength. People will mistake silence for courage, control for wisdom, distance for dignity. Do not believe them. The Duke stopped breathing, because those words felt addressed not merely to Baron, but to him. Baron lowered his head. Keep reading. Wulfric swallowed. When grief arrives, and it shall, do not lock your heart away to survive it. Love will ask much of you. Give anyway. Silence. The room itself seemed to mourn. Finally, Baron rose abruptly. I don't want to hear any more. Baron, I said no. The boy bolted from the library. Footsteps echoed down distant corridors. Wulfric surged to his feet, but Claudia gently spoke. Wait. His eyes snapped toward her. My son is upset. Yes. You expect me to let him run? No. She folded her hands. I expect you to consider why. He stared. What are you suggesting? That Baron spent 4 years believing everyone wanted him to forget his mother. Claudia chose her next words carefully. And now she's speaking directly to him. The Duke's jaw tightened. He should be grateful. Children aren't grateful before they are safe. What exactly does that mean? It means grief arrives differently for the young. A pause. They revisit it. They retreat from it. They circle it. He isn't rejecting her memory. Her voice softened. He's terrified of losing it again. Silence settled heavily between them. Then, Wulfric said quietly, I thought removing reminders would protect him. Claudia met his gaze. Did it protect you? The question struck like lightning. The Duke looked away, because suddenly, he remembered locking the piano, removing portraits, avoiding conversations, pretending absence hurt less than remembrance. He'd called it strength. For the first time in years, Prince Wulfric wondered whether grief had made him cruel. 3 days later, London discovered Claudia Rosetta existed. Aristocratic society rarely moved quickly, unless gossip was involved. Then it moved faster than a wildfire. The Duke's new governess remains employed. Apparently, the heir speaks to her. They say she reads with him. Imagine. A spinster of 37. Surely temporary. Unless... The whispers multiplied. At Lady Fenwick's afternoon tea, women leaned together beneath crystal chandeliers. Have you seen her? Perfectly ordinary. Plain. One cannot imagine the Duke noticing such a woman. Perhaps she's manipulative. Or ambitious. At her age? Laughter followed, soft, refined, cruel. Lady Fenwick smiled over delicate porcelain. I hear she has convinced the heir to behave. Another woman sniffed. Children are easily deceived. And dukes? Oh. The lady smiled thinly. Men rarely notice what's directly before them. By evening, the rumors had reached Ashbourne Hall. Alden Veramont arrived carrying pastries. And scandal. He entered the drawing room dramatically. I've brought both. Wulfric glanced upward. I've enough of one. Which? Both. Alden seated himself. You've become London's favorite entertainment. How tragic. Apparently, you're secretly courting your governess. Wulfric nearly inhaled tea. I beg your pardon? Personally, I expected better gossip. Alden bit into a pastry. Perhaps a Russian spy. A jewel thief. An exiled princess. Instead, Alden gestured vaguely. Competent childcare. Wulfric's expression darkened. Miss Rosetta deserves better than idle speculation. Alden paused, then slowly lowered the pastry. Oh. What? You defended her. I defended fairness. You sound unconvinced. Alden smiled. My dear friend, you never defend anyone. That same evening, Claudia discovered Baron beneath the greenhouse staircase. He sat curled against a stone, knees drawn close, the Duchess's letter clutched tightly in one hand. You found me. I was looking. You always do. She settled beside him. Neither spoke immediately. After several minutes, Baron asked, why didn't Papa read them before? He couldn't. He could. He loved her. Baron looked away. So? Sometimes love makes cowards of us. You think Papa's a coward? I think grief frightened him. Baron considered this. I thought he stopped loving Mama. Oh. Claudia's voice softened. No. What if he stopped loving me? She turned toward him fully. Do you know why children ask impossible questions? He shrugged. Because they desperately need impossible reassurance. He blinked. Did your mother stop loving you when she wasn't in the same room? No. Did she stop loving you when you misbehaved? No. Then why would death alter what life couldn't? Baron's eyes shimmered. I don't know. I don't either. She smiled sadly. But I choose to believe love remains. He leaned against her shoulder, only briefly, but this time he didn't pull away. It happened 2 weeks later, unexpectedly, quietly. Prince Wulfric requested Claudia's presence in his study. The room smelled faintly of cedar and ink. He stood beside the fire, rigid, controlled, almost uncomfortable. Miss Rosetta, Your Grace, you've helped Baron. I've listened to him. Nevertheless, he paused, longer than necessary. There are complications. Claudia waited. Society has begun talking. I gathered. The estate requires stability. Of course. He stared into the flames. As Baron's situation improves, questions increase. Another silence. Then, I wish to propose an arrangement. Her pulse slowed, because suddenly, she understood. Not romance, not affection, duty, protection, practicality. You mean marriage? His eyes lifted. Yes. The word hung heavily between them. You would retain your position. You would gain security. Baron would gain consistency. The rumors would cease. His voice remained measured, logical, controlled, as though negotiating a treaty. Claudia listened quietly, then asked, Do you love me? The Duke froze. I don't believe that is relevant. Do you respect me? Very much. Do you admire me? A pause. Yes. Then why are you asking me to disappear? His expression tightened. I don't understand. You wish to reward usefulness. She met his gaze. You do not choose me. You choose convenience. His voice sharpened. I am offering protection. No, she remained calm. You are offering conditions. Silence. The fire crackled softly. Then Claudia Rosetta said the words that, I will not disappear into usefulness. The Duke stared. I beg your pardon? I have been useful all my life. Her voice never rose. I've been tolerated. Needed. Convenient. But I will not enter a marriage where affection is considered unnecessary. His composure cracked. It wouldn't be unkind. No. She smiled sadly. It would simply be lonely. He looked stricken. For the first time, Prince Wulfric Ashbourne appeared uncertain, vulnerable, human. I hadn't intended insult. I know. Then why refuse? Claudia's eyes softened. Because dignity is often surrendered in very reasonable ways. A long silence followed. Then, Good night, Your Grace. She curtsied and walked toward the door. Miss Rosetta. She paused, without turning. Thank you for considering it. The Duke closed his eyes. Good night. Outside the study, Alden Veramont leaned against the corridor wall, entirely too relaxed. He looked at Claudia, then toward the closed study door, then back again, and sighed dramatically. My heavens. What? He lowered his voice. You may have just broken the Duke's heart. A small smile touched his lips. Before he knew he possessed one. And inside the study, Prince Wulfric stood alone before the fire, because for the first time since becoming the Winter Duke, someone had refused his title, refused his protection, refused the practical future he believed sufficient, and all because Claudia Rosetta wanted something infinitely more terrifying, not useful, not an obligation, not gratitude, to be chosen, freely. If Claudia's courage surprised you, subscribe and stay with us. Because somewhere within Ashbourne Hall, another secret is awakening. And not everyone will celebrate the woman teaching the Duke how to feel again. Scandals rarely announce themselves. They don't knock politely at the front door. They slip beneath it, folded into letters, hidden inside whispers, carried through drawing rooms by people smiling over tea. And by the time the truth catches up, the damage has already begun. 3 mornings after Claudia Rosetta refused the Duke's proposal, Ashbourne Hall received its first letter. The butler presented it during breakfast. Silver clinked against porcelain. Steam curled from untouched tea. Prince Wulfric opened the envelope absent-mindedly, then went perfectly still. Across the table, Baron noticed immediately. What is it? No answer. Wulfric reread the contents. Once, twice. The color drained from his face. Claudia folded her napkin. Your Grace? Slowly. He lowered the letter. It's nothing. Baron's spoon hit the table. That's a lie. Silence. The Duke stared at his son, because Baron had never challenged him openly before. Not like this, not with certainty. It's not nothing, Baron repeated quietly. Wulfric hesitated, then passed the letter to Claudia. Her eyes moved across the elegant script. By the second paragraph, her stomach tightened. It was unsigned, anonymous, cruel, and devastating. London has begun asking whether the heir of Ashbourne is truly entitled to inherit. Perhaps the late Duchess carried secrets of her own. Perhaps bloodlines are not as pure as titles pretend. Investigate while dignity remains possible. Baron stared. His voice emerged as little more than breath. What does it mean? No one answered, because they all understood. Someone had questioned Baron's legitimacy, his right to inherit, his place in the family, his identity. At 9 years old, someone had transformed him into gossip. The boy's face lost all expression. He pushed back his chair. I'll be in the schoolroom. Baron, I'm not hungry. He walked away, perfectly straight-backed, perfectly controlled. Only the trembling of his hands betrayed him. The dining room door closed softly behind him. Wulfric lowered his head. Claudia looked at the letter again, then folded it carefully. The wrong question. The Duke glanced up. What? Not who. Her gaze sharpened. Why now? By afternoon, London had already decided. Lady Fenwick's salon buzzed with speculation. I've always thought the boy looked nothing like the Duke. Nonsense. He resembles the Duchess. Perhaps too much. I heard servants talking. Which servants? Reliable ones. One never knows with these aristocratic marriages. And the governess? Oh, a delicate smile. Poor creature. Imagine becoming attached to a child whose future may collapse. Laughter followed. Refined, elegant, merciless. At Ashbourne Hall, Baron sat before untouched arithmetic. He hadn't spoken in nearly an hour. Claudia waited, not rushing, not filling silence. Eventually, do you think it's true? His voice barely existed. What? That Papa isn't my father. Claudia set aside her pen. What do you believe? I don't know. He stared at the numbers. They all thought I was impossible. Maybe I am. The words shattered her. Baron, you don't know. I know this. She leaned forward slightly. You are kind, he blinked. No. You love deeply. No. You grieve fiercely. His eyes watered. You protect people you love. He shook his head. I push them away. Because you're afraid. Silence. You are curious. Sometimes. You are stubborn. A tiny pause. Definitely. His lips twitched. You are brave. I don't feel brave. Most brave people don't. She smiled softly. And none of those things depend upon blood. The boy lowered his eyes. What if Papa wishes I wasn't his? The question landed like broken glass. Claudia inhaled slowly, then answered with absolute certainty. He already chose you. Baron frowned. What? He has chosen you every morning since your mother died. He stayed. He worried. He failed. He tried again. He loved imperfectly. Her voice softened, but he remained. A tear slid down Baron's cheek, the first Claudia had ever witnessed. He wiped it away instantly, ashamed. I hate crying. I know. It makes me weak. No. She offered him a handkerchief. It means something matters. Outside the schoolroom, Prince Wulfric stood frozen. He'd arrived minutes earlier, intending to speak, unable to interrupt. His son's tears destroyed him, because in 4 years, Baron had never cried. Not at the funeral, not through nightmares, not after 12 departures, nothing. And now, the impossible heir wept because a governess had finally convinced him he was safe enough to do so. Wulfric leaned against the corridor wall, closed his eyes, and quietly broke apart. That evening, Alden Vermont arrived unannounced. He found Wulfric in the study, holding another anonymous letter. There are more? There are always more. Let me see. Alden's usual smile disappeared as he read. This is coordinated. Explain. This isn't gossip. He looked up. It's a strategy. Wulfric's jaw tightened. To what end? Discredit the heir. Force an inquiry. Humiliate your family. Alden folded the paper carefully. This person knows aristocratic politics. Silence settled heavily. Then, you believe someone close is responsible. Alden hesitated. Possibly. You hesitate. Because accusing friends becomes unpleasant. Wulfric stared into the fire. I've very few friends. Alden smiled sadly. You've even fewer enemies. A pause, which makes this personal. Later that night, Claudia wandered through the Duchess's old music room. Dust still lingered. Moonlight painted silver patterns across forgotten furniture. She studied the hidden letters once more. There had been 12, one for each future birthday, one for Baron's wedding, one for milestones she would never witness. One final letter remained sealed. Addressed simply, for Wulfric. Claudia's fingers hovered, then withdrew. Not hers. The room felt heavy somehow, as though memory itself occupied the walls. She turned toward the doorway and stopped. The cabinet beneath the piano stood slightly open. She was certain it hadn't been before. A chill slipped down her spine. Slowly, she approached, opened it wider. Inside, nothing appeared unusual. Sheet music, old programs, dried lavender. Then, her gaze landed upon a folded scrap of paper tucked beneath the lining. Hidden deliberately, carefully, she unfolded it, read, and froze. Because written in hurried handwriting were 6 words. He knows the truth. Beware, Alden. Footsteps echoed somewhere down the corridor. Claudia folded the note instantly, heart racing. No, that wasn't possible. Alden Vermont? The charming family friend? The man who had defended Baron? Who had joked with servants? Who had comforted Wulfric? The man who'd called Claudia courageous? Her pulse thundered. She slipped the note into her sleeve. The footsteps drew closer, closer, closer. Then stopped outside the music room door. A familiar voice floated through the silence. Warm, pleasant, almost amused. Miss Rosetta? Alden. He tapped lightly against the wood. I thought I saw movement. Claudia stared at the hidden message tucked against her wrist. Her breathing slowed deliberately, emotionless, composed. The door handle shifted. "Miss Rosetta?" Alden smiled as he entered, elegant as ever. "I do hope I'm not interrupting." He glanced toward her, toward the piano, toward the cabinet. And for the first time since Claudia Rosetta had arrived at Ashbourne Hall, she didn't know whether the man before her was a friend or enemy, because someone inside Ashbourne Hall had declared war on an innocent child. Someone had hidden warnings among the Duchess's belongings. Someone knew secrets capable of destroying the Ashbourne name forever. And according to the message now concealed against Claudia's skin, that someone feared Alden Vermont, or wanted her to. There are moments when fear announces itself immediately, a scream, a crash, a door thrown open in the night. But the most dangerous fear arrives quietly. It begins with absence, and by the time you realize something precious is missing, the world has already changed. The morning after Claudia Rosetta discovered the hidden warning, Ashbourne Hall awoke beneath a blanket of fog. The estate felt wrong, not chaotic, not yet, simply watchful, as though the old house itself held its breath. Claudia sat in the schoolroom pretending to read. Instead, her thoughts returned again and again to 6 impossible words. He knows the truth. Beware Alden. Alden Vermont. Charming, attentive, loyal, or perhaps dangerous. She folded the note more carefully and tucked it deeper into her sleeve. Until she understood its meaning, she trusted no one, not even her instincts. Baron arrived 10 minutes late. He entered quietly, too quietly. Gone was the spark she'd fought so hard to nurture. His eyes looked older. The anonymous letters had done their work. "Good morning," he nodded. "Morning. You didn't sleep. You noticed. You have shadows beneath your eyes." Baron sat at the desk. "I kept thinking. About? What if everyone hates me again?" The question emerged so softly, it barely reached her. Claudia set aside her papers. "Do you know what I think?" "What?" "I think people become very foolish when frightened. They aren't frightened. They're cruel. Sometimes they're both." He stared at his hands. "I wish Mama were here." "I know. You always say that, because it's true." Silence settled between them. Then, "I don't remember her laugh anymore." His voice cracked. "I remember lavender. The piano. The color of her dress. But I don't remember." He stopped, pressed trembling fingers against his eyes. "I don't remember her laugh." Claudia moved beside him. Not too close, close enough. "You know something remarkable about memory?" "What?" "It changes shape. It doesn't disappear. It waits." He looked up. "You really believe that?" "I do." "Even if everyone else forgets?" "Especially then." Baron nodded slowly, then whispered, "I think I want to hear the rest of her letters." It was the first time he'd asked. The first time. Hope bloomed carefully inside Claudia's chest. "Then we'll ask your father tonight." He managed a small smile. "All right." By afternoon, the fog thickened. Servants moved quickly through corridors. A strange unease settled over Ashbourne Hall. Alden arrived shortly after luncheon. "Has anyone else noticed?" he announced cheerfully, "that this estate has become dramatically less welcoming?" The housekeeper sniffed. "You say that every winter." "Because it's true every winter." His smile faltered when he noticed Claudia. "You look troubled." "I slept poorly." Alden studied her, long enough for discomfort to bloom. "You don't trust me." Her heart skipped. "What makes you say that?" "My dear Miss Rosetta," he smiled gently, "you've begun looking at me as though calculating whether poison would improve my personality." Despite herself, a breath of laughter escaped. He sighed dramatically. "I shall take that as a compliment." But something lingered behind his expression. Hurt, or was it caution? She couldn't tell anymore. At precisely 6 o'clock, Prince Wulfric entered the drawing room carrying the Duchess's letters. Baron appeared moments later, nervous, determined. The fire crackled softly. Outside, wind whispered against ancient windows. You wish to continue? The Duke's voice sounded uncertain. Baron nodded. I think so. Wulfric looked toward Claudia. She gave the slightest encouragement. The Duke opened another letter. His late wife's elegant handwriting flowed once more. My darling Baron, if you are reading this, then you have survived another year without my embrace. For that alone, I am proud of you. Baron's breathing hitched. Please forgive your father. He loves fiercely and imperfectly. He mistakes protection for silence. Do not allow him to carry sorrow alone. The Duke stopped. His voice failed. Baron stared. Slowly, he looked toward his father. You thought talking about her would hurt me. Wulfric closed his eyes. Yes, you were wrong. Yes. A long silence followed. Then Baron whispered, I missed her. The Duke's composure shattered. So did I. 4 words, simple, late, but honest. Father and son looked at one another, 2 grieving people, separated by years of misunderstanding, finally finding a language. Then, the grandfather clock struck 7. A servant appeared. Your Grace. What is it? The stable master requests your presence immediately. Wulfric frowned. Now? He said it's urgent. The Duke hesitated, then rose. I'll return shortly. He glanced at Baron. Stay here. The boy nodded. I will. Wulfric left. The drawing room doors closed. Silence returned. Baron looked toward Claudia. I think Papa cried. Very quietly. He hates crying. So do you. A tiny smile. He gets that from me. No. Claudia adjusted the blanket across his knees. I suspect you inherited stubbornness from both parents. For the first time that evening, Baron laughed. 30 minutes later, the Duke returned. Mud clung to his boots. There was no emergency. What? The stable master never sent for me. Cold settled into the room. Claudia looked toward Baron's chair. Empty. Her breath stopped. No, no. She stood instantly. Baron? Silence. The drawing room suddenly seemed enormous, too quiet. Baron? Nothing. The Duke's face lost all color. Search the house. Servants scattered. Footsteps thundered through corridors. Doors flew open. The housekeeper called instructions. Maids checked closets. Footmen searched attics. The gardens, the kitchens, the chapel. Nothing. No Baron. Prince Wulfric's breathing became uneven. He was here. He promised. He promised. His voice cracked. Claudia had never seen him afraid, not truly, until now. He wouldn't leave willingly. You don't know that. I do. Wulfric gripped the mantle. What if someone took him? What if... His voice broke completely. What if I lose him too? The Winter Duke looked suddenly human, terrified, helpless, a father. Claudia placed steady hands upon his trembling ones. Look at me. He obeyed. We will find him. You can't promise that. No. Her voice remained calm. But panic will not help your son. His breathing slowed fractionally. Think. Where would Baron go? I don't know. Yes. She squeezed his hands once. You do. You know your son. Wulfric shut his eyes. He likes the greenhouse. No. He'd know we'd search there. The chapel? He avoids it. Silence. Think, think, think. Then Claudia remembered. Music, lavender, letters, memory. Her eyes widened. Oh. What? She looked toward the corridor, heart pounding. He left clues. What? He trusted we'd understand. She moved immediately, skirts gathered, boots striking polished floors, past portraits, past staircases, toward the west wing, the abandoned nursery. Wulfric followed. Claudia! He isn't running away. Then what? He went somewhere his mother loved. Wind howled outside. Thunder rumbled overhead. Storm clouds gathered above Ashbourne Hall. They climbed narrow servant stairs. Higher, higher. The old nursery door stood slightly open. Wulfric shoved it wider, empty. No. Claudia looked around desperately. Toy soldiers, dust, a rocking horse, then a folded scrap of paper beneath the window. She snatched it up. Baron's handwriting, messy, hurried. You taught me to follow memories. I remembered something important. Don't be angry. I went to find the truth. Wulfric's blood ran cold. What truth? Then Claudia noticed another line, written smaller, as though added afterward. I wasn't alone. Lightning flashed. Thunder shook the estate. Prince Wulfric stared at the note. His voice emerged as little more than breath. Someone got to him first. Outside, the storm finally broke over Ashbourne Hall, and somewhere beyond the safety of ancient walls, the impossible heir had vanished into the darkness, not lost, not alone. And for the first time since Claudia Rosetta entered their lives, she didn't know whether they were already too late. There are moments when love whispers, a hand offered in grief, a lullaby played in an abandoned schoolroom, a child reaching for comfort, and then there are moments when love stands before the world and refuses to be silent. This was one of those moments. Rain lashed against the carriages as they left Ashbourne Hall. Prince Wulfric barely noticed. His gloved hands clenched Baron's note so tightly the paper had begun to crease. Beside him, Claudia Rosetta sat unnaturally still, the calm at the center of a storm, but even calm had a heartbeat, and hers was racing. I remembered something important. I wasn't alone. The words replayed endlessly. Tell me what you're thinking. The Duke's voice sounded rough. Claudia looked toward the rain-streaked glass. The Duchess. What about her? Baron didn't run. He followed something. What? The letters changed him. She met Wulfric's gaze. He remembered something. Lightning illuminated his face. He never mentioned another place. He wouldn't. Why? Because children protect secrets. A pause. Especially promises. The Duke looked away. He promised his mother something. Yes. Silence. Then, the summer house. Wulfric's head snapped toward her. What? The Duchess loved the old summer conservatory. She took Baron there, often. His breathing caught. God. He slammed against the carriage ceiling. Faster! The driver cracked the reins. The horses surged forward. The summer conservatory stood near the edge of the Ashbourne estate, neglected, beautiful. Glass walls wrapped in climbing ivy, once filled with orchids and laughter, now surrendered to dust and memory. The carriage stopped abruptly. Wulfric leapt down before it fully halted. Baron! Rain drenched him instantly. No answer. Claudia followed close behind. Thunder cracked overhead. The conservatory doors stood slightly open. The Duke's pulse thundered louder than the storm. He pushed inside. Baron! Silence. Then, Papa? The smallest voice, shaking, alive. Wulfric turned. Baron emerged from behind a marble bench, wet, terrified, and unharmed. The Duke crossed the room in seconds, dropping to his knees, pulling his son into his arms. Baron stiffened, then clung to him desperately. You came, his voice broke. You came. Wulfric held him tighter. I'll always come. You were angry. I was frightened. I thought, no. The Duke pressed trembling kisses against Baron's hair. No. You hear me? Baron's shoulders shook. I'll always come. Then Claudia noticed something. Someone else stood near the shattered greenhouse wall, watching. A figure half hidden by shadows. Elegant, still. A man. Her blood ran cold. Alden. Wulfric turned sharply. Baron gasped. Alden Veramont stepped forward slowly. Rainwater darkened his coat. His expression remained unreadable. For several seconds, no one moved. Then Wulfric rose. You? Alden sighed. Please don't shoot me. I don't possess a firearm. That is genuinely reassuring. Why are you here? Alden glanced toward Baron. I followed him. You what? He left the estate. He wasn't alone. I couldn't stop him. So I stayed near. Wulfric's face hardened. You expect me to trust that? No. Alden's voice softened. But perhaps trust this. He withdrew folded documents from inside his coat. I discovered who sent the letters. Silence. What? I spent 3 days investigating. You investigated? My dear Wulfric. Alden managed a tired smile. You've never noticed how extraordinarily nosy I am. He handed over the papers. The Duke unfolded them. His face changed instantly. No. Claudia stepped closer. Recognition struck. Lady Fenwick, the signatures, financial transfers, private correspondence, the architect of the scandal. Lady Fenwick, the very woman hosting society's cruelest gossip. Baron stared. The tea lady? Alden blinked. Yes, that seems ridiculous. Welcome to aristocracy. The truth emerged quickly. Lady Fenwick's nephew stood to gain influence if Ashbourne's succession collapsed. Questions regarding Baron's legitimacy would trigger investigations, delay inheritance, create opportunities. She had weaponized the rumor against a grieving child because power mattered more than innocence. Wulfric lowered the evidence. Fury radiated from him. She attacked my son. Yes. Alden's voice lost all humor. And London helped. Baron looked toward Claudia. They hated me. No. She crouched before him. They feared uncertainty. They chose cruelty. That belongs to them, not you. His eyes filled, but everyone believed it. Then, no. Prince Wulfric spoke. For the first time, his voice carried not coldness, but conviction. They believed because I remained silent. Everyone turned toward him. I taught London that appearances mattered more than truth. He looked at Baron, then Claudia. I won't make that mistake again. 3 days later, London gathered at Ashbourne Hall. Invitations had been delivered personally, no explanations offered. Curiosity guaranteed attendance. The ballroom glittered beneath chandeliers. Ladies arrived adorned in silk. Gentlemen whispered behind polished smiles. Lady Fenwick herself entered confidently, until she noticed the Duke, waiting, expressionless, Alden beside him, Claudia nearby. Baron standing straight at her side. The room quieted. Wulfric stepped forward. Thank you for coming. Silence answered. He surveyed London's elite, faces he'd known all his life, people who had gossiped about his son, people who had mocked Claudia, people who had mistaken silence for dignity. I have spent years believing privacy protected my family. His voice carried effortlessly. I was wrong. Whispers died. Someone among you attempted to destroy my son's future. Gasps rippled. Lady Fenwick paled. The evidence has been delivered to appropriate authorities. No one breathed. But before consequences arrive, Wulfric turned toward Baron. My son deserves the truth. He placed a steady hand upon Baron's shoulder. Baron Ashbourne is my heir, my pride, my greatest responsibility. Emotion roughened his voice, and no rumor shall ever alter that. Baron's eyes widened, the ballroom blurred, because everyone could hear, everyone could see. His father had chosen him publicly, openly, freely. Then Prince Wulfric turned once more. Toward Claudia Rosetta, the room followed, the spinster governess, the overlooked woman, the one London's drawing rooms had dismissed. Wulfric looked directly at her. I owe another truth. Claudia's breath caught. The Duke's voice softened. The woman many of you ignored. He paused. Saved my son. Silence. She restored music to this house. She uncovered the deception. She taught courage. She offered kindness where others offered judgment. He looked at London's elite. You called her ordinary. His gaze returned to Claudia. You were mistaken. A long pause. Then, Miss Rosetta. His voice faltered slightly. You saved him. He looked toward Baron, then back again. And somewhere along the way, he swallowed. You saved me. The ballroom stood utterly still. No whispers, no gossip, only the truth. Claudia stared, speechless. because for the first time in her life, her worth wasn't being whispered. It was being proclaimed by the one man whose recognition she had never dared desire. Baron slipped his hand into hers. "Miss Rosetta?" "Yes?" A small smile appeared through tears. They finally noticed. Claudia looked toward the Duke, toward London, toward the impossible future unfolding before her, then down at the little boy who had taught her how brave love truly was. "Yes." Her voice trembled softly. "I believe they did." There are many kinds of love stories. Some begin with lightning, some with stolen glances across crowded ballrooms, some with reckless passion. But the rarest kind begins with recognition, not of beauty, not of status, but of truth. It is the moment someone looks at another human being and finally sees them completely and chooses them anyway. The ballroom at Ashbourne Hall remained unusually quiet. No orchestra resumed playing. No one rushed toward the refreshment tables. The aristocracy of London stood frozen beneath glittering chandeliers. Because Prince Wulfric Ashbourne had just done the unthinkable, he had publicly praised a governess, a spinster, a woman society had spent years overlooking, and he had done so without apology. Claudia Rosetta stood beside Baron, hands clasped tightly before her, unable to move, unable to speak. For 37 years, she had learned how to disappear gracefully. She had smiled politely when conversations drifted past her, accepted practical gratitude in place of affection, watched younger women marry while acquaintances assured her, "You're still useful." Useful. How strange that a single word could feel so much like loneliness. And now, before London's elite, someone had spoken her worth aloud, without condition, without embarrassment, without qualification. Lady Fenwick was escorted from the ballroom shortly thereafter. Her protests echoed behind closed doors. "I merely asked questions. You cannot ruin me over speculation." No one answered, because everyone present knew the truth. Speculation had nearly destroyed a child. Silence had allowed it, and Ashbourne Hall had finally chosen honesty instead. One by one, guests began approaching Baron, the same people who had whispered, questioned, doubted. A silver-haired countess curtsied slightly before him. "Lord Baron," the boy blinked, "I owe you an apology." Another gentleman removed his spectacles nervously. "You conducted yourself with remarkable courage." Baron glanced toward Claudia, as if uncertain what to do. She smiled gently. "You may accept kindness without forgetting its absence." The boy considered this, then nodded. "Thank you." The countess smiled sadly. "You sound exactly like your mother." Baron's breath caught. For the first time, the comparison no longer hurt. Later that evening, Ashbourne Hall finally grew quiet. The guests departed. Carriages disappeared into the mist. Servants extinguished candles, and the estate exhaled. Baron stood beside the drawing-room windows, watching snow begin to fall. "I think London is strange." Alden appeared beside him. "My dear boy," he sighed dramatically, "that is the wisest observation anyone has made all evening." Baron looked upward. "Did you really investigate Lady Fenwick?" "Of course." "Why?" Alden adjusted his cuffs. "Because I happen to like your father. And because Miss Rosetta looked increasingly prepared to accuse me of murder." From across the room, Claudia nearly choked on her tea. "I never accused you. You suspected." "I exercised caution." Alden smiled. "You're terrifying." Baron grinned. "I knew she wasn't ordinary." Alden lowered himself dramatically into a chair. None of us noticed. He glanced toward Claudia, which says considerably more about us than it does about her. Hours later, after Baron had finally retired to bed, Prince Wulfric found Claudia standing alone in the music room. Moonlight spilled across polished keys. The Duchess's letters rested neatly upon the piano. She didn't turn immediately. "You should be resting." "So should you." Neither moved. The silence between them had changed. No longer cautious, no longer uncertain, only honest. Finally, Wulfric spoke. I owe you an apology. She turned. For what? For many things. He approached slowly, measured. I offered you practicality. You deserved vulnerability. He stopped several feet away. Firelight danced across his face. You asked if I loved you. Claudia's pulse quickened. You told me the answer wasn't relevant. At the time. A faint smile touched his lips. I believed it wasn't. His gaze lowered briefly, then returned to hers. I noticed your patience first. The way you listened when others rushed to judgment. The way you treated my son as though he were wounded instead of difficult. You saw fear where others saw defiance. His voice softened. Then I noticed your courage. You challenged me. You refused me. You walked away from security because dignity mattered more. Claudia felt tears threatening. He took another step. I admired your intelligence. The questions you asked. The truths you uncovered. The way you understood grief better than anyone I've known. A long silence. Then, and somewhere between lullabies and arithmetic, and teaching my son how to laugh again. His voice broke slightly. I fell in love with you. Claudia closed her eyes, because after years of being tolerated, needed, overlooked, these words felt almost unbearable. You don't owe me this. No. He shook his head. I don't. Which is precisely why it matters. The Winter Duke looked suddenly uncertain, not powerful, not feared, only a man standing before the woman he loved. I don't know how to court properly. A small laugh escaped her. Neither do I. I don't know how to stop making practical decisions. I've noticed. His mouth curved slightly. But I know this. He took one final step. I don't wish to choose convenience anymore. I don't wish to choose usefulness. I choose you. His voice trembled, freely. The tears finally escaped. Claudia laughed softly through them. You took an extraordinarily long route to arrive there. I've been informed I'm stubborn. By whom? Everyone. She smiled. Then, I love you too. The confession settled gently between them. No fireworks, no orchestra, only certainty, the kind built through trust, through grief, through choosing again and again to remain. Wulfric reached for her hand, slowly, giving her every opportunity to refuse. She placed her fingers within his and held on. A small voice echoed from the doorway. I knew it. Both turned. Baron stood in his nightclothes, arms crossed, entirely unimpressed. You should be asleep. You should stop talking so much. Alden appeared behind him, holding a candle. I attempted supervision. He sighed. Unfortunately, he inherited Ashbourne determination. Baron ignored him. He looked toward Claudia. If you become Duchess... He hesitated. May I still show you my piano mistakes? Silence. Then Claudia knelt before him. Oh, Baron. She brushed curls from his forehead. I should be deeply offended if you stopped. His eyes brightened. Even the terrible ones? Especially those. He threw his arms around her, then hesitated. May I still call you Miss Rosetta sometimes? Emotion tightened her throat. You may call me whatever reminds you that I love you. Baron hugged her tighter. Good. He glanced toward his father. You took long enough. Alden burst into laughter. I've been saying precisely that for weeks. Even Wulfric smiled. A real smile, unrestrained, the first Claudia had ever seen. Spring arrived gradually at Ashbourne Hall. Music returned. The piano no longer gathered dust. Baron's laughter echoed through corridors once haunted by silence. The Duchess's letters found their proper place within the library, not hidden, honored. And Claudia Rosetta, the woman no duke had wanted, walked those halls no longer as someone tolerated, nor convenient, nor merely useful. She was chosen, openly, freely, beloved. One afternoon, while watching Baron race through the gardens with Alden dramatically pretending defeat. Wulfric slipped beside her. "You know, what? You changed everything." Claudia leaned gently against him. "No." Her eyes followed the boy laughing beneath spring sunlight. "I simply noticed what everyone else missed." Wulfric kissed her forehead. "Then perhaps—" He smiled softly. "Nor the rest of us should have looked closer. Because sometimes the world overlooks extraordinary women. It mistakes quietness for weakness, patience for passivity, gentleness for insignificance. But worth does not diminish because it goes unseen. And love, real love, does not choose convenience. It chooses courage. Again, and again, and again. Until one day, the woman no duke wanted becomes the woman no one can imagine living without. If you enjoyed impossible heirs, emotionally constipated dukes, suspiciously observant governesses, and aristocratic tea drinkers discovering consequences for the very first time, subscribe and join our little drawing room. After all, someone still has to supervise Alden.